The sirens hit the ridge before I even stepped back from the gate. 1 second, I was tightening the final bolt. The next, Bethany Crowell's SUV skidded up like she was storming a crime scene. "There, he's blocking the community road," she screamed, already dialing 911. "He's armed and hostile." The weapon in my hand was a wrench, still warm from the work. "Ma'am, step back," Sheriff Morales ordered as he arrived, eyes bouncing between us. Bethany pointed at me with shaking fury. "Arrest him. He's trapping the neighborhood." The sheriff turned to me. "Remy, before this gets worse, do you have any idea what the HOA just filed against you?" And that's when everything shifted. Bethany Crowell wasn't just an HOA president, she was the kind of suburban monarch who thought a clipboard outranked common sense. The woman lived for rules, for power, for the sound of her own voice echoing across property lines she refused to acknowledge. And the moment she decided my ranch road belonged to her community, she treated me like a trespasser on my own land. Her control issues showed early, counting cars that passed her house, lecturing neighbors about mailbox height, filing complaints over lawn chairs left out too long. But when she realized people preferred cutting across my private lane instead of using the subdivision's muddy main road, something clicked behind her eyes. Convenience turned into expectation, and expectation turned into obsession. Then there was Marcus Hale, the HOA vice president. Quiet, polished, corporate. If Bethany was the mouth, Marcus was the machinery behind it. He never raised his voice, never showed emotion, he simply pushed boundaries with a smile and a clipboard. Where Bethany demanded, Marcus strategized. Where Bethany yelled, Marcus maneuvered. Together they made a perfect storm, her entitlement, his ambition. And once I locked that gate, they didn't just want access. They wanted control, and neither of them planned to stop where the property line ended. I didn't buy the ranch for neighbors' noise or community potlucks. I bought it for the quiet. The kind of quiet you earn after years of saving, hauling, fixing, and rebuilding a life from the ground up. 15 years earlier, the land was nothing but overgrown brush and a beaten stretch of dirt barely wide enough for a truck. I cleared it myself, carved the lane with my own equipment, and marked it in the county records the way every rancher does simple legal mine. Back then, Lakeview Estates didn't exist. The subdivision came later, rows of identical homes pressed against the ridge, built by people who liked country living as long as they didn't have to deal with the country part. When storms hit and their main road washed out, a couple of residents asked if they could use my lane temporarily. I said yes. It felt neighborly, harmless. But the thing about favors is they can grow teeth. 2 families turned into 5, then 10. Soon, delivery trucks were cutting through daily because GPS said my lane was faster. Teenagers treated it like a backroad racetrack. More than once, I sprinted out to stop someone from plowing straight into my goats. So I posted small signs, private ranch road, permission only. They were ignored before the screws finished settling. The HOA didn't ask questions. They didn't apologize. They didn't offer maintenance help or courtesy. They simply decided my road was community access because it was convenient and because nobody pushed back. Every attempt I made to set boundaries was brushed aside. Their main road stayed muddy and poorly graded, but instead of fixing it, they treated my lane as the solution. When I attended one HOA meeting to ask why traffic had doubled, I heard their plan in plain English: formalize the access, write it into HOA documents. If he doesn't object, we can classify it as historic use. That was the moment the ground shifted. Not because I feared them, but because I finally understood them. They didn't want help, they wanted claim. And once an HOA decides something is theirs, even when it's not, the fight isn't about roads anymore. It's about power, precedent, and who's willing to stand up when a line gets crossed. The shift started small enough that someone less observant might have missed it. I didn't. The morning after the first sheriff call, a neatly folded notice appeared on my gatepost: road maintenance standards not met. It listed potholes, erosion, and visibility issues, as if the HOA had jurisdiction over a ranch road miles outside their boundary. I found another note on my truck windshield that afternoon: community expects compliance. Community. As if I belonged to theirs. I caught residents slowing their cars beside my fence, phones raised, recording the road I'd built long before their subdivision existed. One woman even measured the width of the lane with a tape measure, pretending not to see me standing 10 yards away. It didn't feel threatening yet. It felt like reconnaissance, like they were testing how close they could get before I pushed back. But the mini twist came that evening: a brand new green metal sign bolted to my fence line. Public easement, Lakeview residents only. Someone wasn't hinting anymore. Someone wanted to rewrite the rules in plain sight. 2 days later, the HOA stopped pretending. Marcus rolled up in a spotless white F-150 with a contractor's flatbed behind him, surveying rods, stakes, and measuring wheels stacked high like they had a construction permit for my land. "Morning, Remy," Marcus said, stepping onto the gravel like he'd already claimed it. "Just a routine community assessment." The contractor moved toward the gate until I raised my phone. "You step 1 inch past that line and you're trespassing. I'm recording." He froze instantly, but Marcus didn't. He walked right up to the steel, tapped it with his clipboard, and said, "You think this gate stops anything? It stops you," I said. He smiled a quiet little smile that meant he had a plan I wasn't meant to see yet. When they left, they didn't leave quietly. They left a laminated notice zip-tied to my fence. "HOA will begin road evaluation for future paving approval." Paving. On my land? That wasn't misunderstanding. That was intent, and someone expected me to panic or yield. They miscalculated. Pressure turned into damage within a day. Trash 2 black sacks appeared along my fence line. Not the kind that blows in from the highway, the kind someone places. A statement. That night, one of my motion sensor lights snapped on behind the barn. No wind, no animals. The camera caught a man in a polo pacing the creek bank, measuring with a rod, talking into a phone. The logo on his jacket wasn't HOA. It was High Plains Development Group, a developer, surveying my land at night, without permission. The next morning, I drove to the county records office looking for answers. Darla, the clerk, pulled up recent filings, and my stomach dropped. A fresh plant had been added. A dotted historic community access corridor cutting straight through my ranch road, signed by a surveyor who'd retired 5 years earlier. Forgery, filed as if it were fact. I took photos of everything and sent them to my attorney, Sarah. She didn't mince words. "Remy, this isn't neighbor drama anymore. This is a coordinated land grab." When I got home, 3 residents were standing at my lane entrance, pointing cameras at the gate posts I planned to anchor. They scattered when they saw me. I didn't chase them. I had bigger threats now, and they were wearing developer badges. At 6:02 a.m. The next morning, the HOA made their next move. 3 cars blocked the entrance to my lane, hoods, angled residents, yelling, cameras rolling. Bethany paced like she was auditioning for a disaster movie. "Dispatch, it's an emergency. He locked us in. Kids can't get to school." It was the second false 911 call in as many days. When Sheriff Morales arrived, he looked exhausted before he even stepped out of the cruiser. "Remy, they're claiming your gate blocks emergency vehicles. The county fire chief has to inspect this now. Emergency access." The HOA was escalating to force my hand legally. I showed Jake the forged plat, the trespassing photos, the trash, the night survey. He stared long and slow. "This isn't HOA-level trouble anymore," he said quietly. "Someone's feeding them ammunition." He meant the developer. And the final twist of this layer came that afternoon. A stranger in a black SUV stopped at my gate and studied the keypad like he was memorizing it. When I stepped onto the porch, he sped away, no front plate. 2 days later, everything snapped into place, but not because of the HOA, because of a whistleblower. A folded note appeared on my gate, slipped anonymously. "The HOA is voting tonight to approve a deal with High Plains for your road. Marcus promised residents compensation. Compensation for my land." Someone was selling rights to something they didn't own. Then Sarah called. Her voice was tight. "Remy, someone leaked internal emails. You need to get to my office." The emails were unmistakable. High Plains directing the HOA to pressure me, create safety complaints, escalate emergency claims, and manufacture resident support. Marcus coordinating surveys. Bethany scripting the danger narrative. And the biggest line of all, if the owner resists, proceed with forced easement through community necessity. Projected value $4.6 million. My road wasn't a convenience. It was the keystone in a multi-million-dollar expansion. That night, we filed a counter lawsuit for fraud, harassment, and attempted land seizure. The next morning, the courthouse hallway was packed with residents, HOA, board members, and developers, pretending they had nothing to do with any of this. When the bailiff called our case, I stepped inside, knowing the next hour would decide the fate of my land and theirs. The courtroom felt tighter than any fence line I'd ever mended. Residents filled the benches, some whispering, others glaring, like I'd personally rerouted their lives. Bethany sat front and center, chin-high pastel blazer ironed so stiff it could have stood without her in it. Marcus kept his head down, tapping one foot so fast it telegraphed panic. The HOA's attorney wasted no time. "Your Honor, the defendant unlawfully blocked a historic community access lane. Residents were endangered." Judge Harris raised a brow. "Historic, very well. You'll provide proof." The attorney gestured dramatically at me. "Mr. Carter's road has been used openly for over a decade. He acted without notice, locking out families' emergency vehicles. Sarah rose calmly. We'll address each claim, Your Honor, and we'll show the HOA's entire narrative is built on falsehoods. Bethany sat forward like she couldn't wait to perform. The judge leaned back. All right, let's see the evidence. My pulse steadied. This was where the noise ended and the truth took the stand. Sarah began with precision, clean, surgical. Your Honor, this is the plat the HOA filed, claiming a historic access lane. She projected the document on the courtroom screen. At first glance, it looked official, stamped, signed, neatly drawn. Then she held up a certified copy of the surveyor's real times, signature, from 5 years before his retirement. The HOA's plat bears the name of a man who legally could not have filed it, she said. His signature is forged. A wave of murmurs rippled through the gallery. Bethany stiffened. Marcus swallowed hard. But Sarah wasn't finished. Next came the email's highlighted lines, printed dates, forwarding chains connecting the HOA to High Plains Development Group. Your Honor, she read, this is from Vice President Hale *. We can justify emergency access issues. County will listen if enough residents complain. *. Gasps. Sarah clicked again. Another email *. If owner resists, escalate. High Plains needs that corridor. *. Then the footage of the nighttime survey, the developer's employee pacing my creek with a measuring rod pinning an unauthorized notice to my fence. Finally, Sheriff Morales took the stand. All 911 calls were false reports, he testified. No threats, no emergency, and the road is unquestionably private. Even the judge exhaled sharply. The HOA's case wasn't crumbling, it was disintegrating. Judge Harris tapped his pen 3 times, his tell for bad news someone wasn't ready to hear. He turned first to the HOA attorney. Counselor, unless you intend to argue against forged signatures, falsified claims, and developer collusion, I'm ready to rule. The attorney's shoulders sagged. Your Honor, the HOA requests reconsideration. Denied. He pivoted to Bethany and Marcus. You two orchestrated a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and falsified documentation against a private landowner. This court does not tolerate manufactured emergencies or fraudulent claims. Bethany shot to her feet. You can't do this. That road is essential. Our property values, our safety. Sit, the judge said, voice low enough to cut steel. She sat. His ruling came clean and final. ****. The ranch road is private property. The gate is legal. The fraudulent plat is void and referred for criminal investigation. The HOA's lawsuit is dismissed in full. President Crowell is fined for misuse of emergency services. Vice President Hale is referred to the county attorney for review of his involvement with High Plains Development. ****. A silence fell so heavy, it felt like the whole room stopped breathing. Residents turned staring daggers at the board that had dragged them here. Marcus slipped out the side door, like a man escaping a collapsing building. Bethany stayed frozen, eyes empty, lips trembling, not from anger anymore, but from the realization that her power was gone. Judge Harris gathered his papers, looked at me once, and nodded. The gavel struck. The fight for my land was over. But the fallout was only beginning. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the Montana air felt different, lighter, like the weight of a whole subdivision had finally rolled off my shoulders. Sunlight washed over the steps, catching the embossed seal of the protected road certificate tucked under my arm. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for another notice, another threat, another stranger pacing my fence line with a clipboard. A few Lakeview residents approached me before heading to their cars. Remy, we didn't know, one man said, eyes low. Another added, they made it sound like you were attacking the community. We're sorry, I nodded. I didn't need their apologies, but I appreciated them. People get swept up easily when fear and authority push them from behind. When I got back to the ranch that evening, the gate stood exactly as I'd left it, straight, strong, unmoved by months of conflict. I punched in the code, heard the clean click of the lock releasing, and walked through like I was stepping into my land for the first time again. My dog trotted out from the porch, tail wagging. The goats grazed lazily by the creek. Wind whispered through the cottonwoods with no engines, no voices, no unwanted tires, grinding gravel. Quiet finally meant quiet again. I hadn't realized how much I missed that. 2 days later, Darla from the county records office called. Remy, the judge filed 2 orders today. Thought you'd want to hear it directly. The first order formally voided the forged plat and launched a county-level investigation. The second authorized the permanent protective designation of my ranch road, meaning no HOA developer or future subdivision could challenge it again. "This doesn't happen often," Darla said, "but the judge thought your situation warranted it." That hit deeper than I expected. Not the certificate itself, but the recognition. The acknowledgement that a rancher defending his land wasn't just being stubborn, he was right. Meanwhile, word spread fast through Lakeview Estates. Bethany resigned within 48 hours, citing health reasons, though everyone knew it was the fines, the humiliation, and the pending inquiry. Marcus vanished from public view entirely. Rumor said he'd been terminated from his consulting job when High Plains realized he'd dragged their name into a legal firestorm. High Plains Development Group released a carefully crafted statement denying involvement, but Sarah forwarded me a notice from the county HPDG, land use petition, withdrawn pending investigation. Translation: their entire expansion project had collapsed. Without my road, they had no route. Without the route, they had no rezoning. Without the rezoning, they had no millions. And they knew exactly who defeated them. A week after the ruling, I found a small envelope taped to my gate. No threats, no warnings. Inside was a handwritten note from one of the residents, a woman named Claire, the quiet one who'd tipped us off about the HOA vote. "Thank you for standing your ground. Some of us didn't have the courage to speak. Your fight kept the rest of us from being used." I kept that note. Life returned to its rhythm. Coffee on the porch, cattle checks at sunrise, the gate swinging shut behind me with a sound that now felt like peace instead of defense. Some evenings I'd walk the full stretch of the lane. Every post, every fence line, every piece of that road meant something different now. Not just a boundary, but a reminder that silence can be mistaken for surrender, and kindness can be twisted if you don't protect it. One afternoon, Sheriff Morales dropped by. "Had to see the famous gate myself," he joked, leaning on the fence. I handed him a cup of coffee. "It's just steel," I said. He shook his head. "After what you've been through, no. It's a line in the sand." He was right. Weeks later, during a quiet sunset, I stood at the gate again, the one that started the war and ended it. The sky blazed orange behind the ridge, and the steel glowed warm in the fading light. "This," I whispered to no one but the wind, "is what a boundary looks like. Some gates keep people out, some gates keep peace in, and this one, mine, reminded me that land truth and a man's right to stand his ground are worth protecting every single time." If you've ever fought for your home, your land, or your dignity, you already know exactly what I mean.